week 2 of the fantasy football season. His wide receiver starts it every matchup I'm going through with notable wide receivers in each game. First game Thursday night, Commanders at the Packers. Terry McLaurin is starting. I know week 1 we didn't see much from Terry McLaurin. Still getting back into shape after he missed all the training camp with his contract holdout. And I think this week this could be a high-scoring game at Green Bay. So Terry McLaurin, I'd give him a start. Deebo Samuel will start as well. Last week, a good start to his Commander career. He found the end zone. He was heavily targeted in that ball game. And this week, if they want to put points on the board versus Green Bay, this could be a potential high-scoring game. I think Deebo once again could go out there and do it, especially with one of the better quarterbacks in the league in Jaden Daniels. Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden are fringe options. I know Jaden Reed, he found the end zone last week. It was a nice game for him, no doubt about it. But he's been up and down throughout his Packer career. We know Jordan Love likes spreading that football out, so I'm not 100% sold, even though he had a good game last week, that Jaden Reed's going to do it again. He's a fringe option. Matthew Golden, a quiet first career game for him where he didn't do much at all for this Green Bay Packer team. But this week it could be a high-scoring game between both these teams. I know last week on paper it was a tough matchup versus division rival the Lions, but the Lions offense didn't do much, and Green Bay in the second half of that game ran the football a whole lot, and these plays didn't have to do much. Romeo Doubs, Latavian Wicks, both sits for me. Doubs, I know he had a decent game, but Doubs, pretty much, it's a big play and nothing we've seen over the last couple seasons, and inconsistency. So he's not a receiver I trust. He's a sit. Latavian Wicks, he's really the number 4 wide receiver, even though he's in there on a decent amount of packages. But another player, you just can only start a decent amount of wideouts. He's a sit as well. Giants at the Cowboys. I think this could be a high-scoring game. I know the Giants' offensive line's been a problem. Russell Wilson didn't look good in Week 1 in Washington, but this Cowboy defense just isn't good. We saw Philly have their way with them in Week 1. Some elite neighbors last week, he dropped some passes, some frustration, yelling at Dable yelling back at him, but I think this week he gets things going. His neighbors, he's a start. Wandale Robinson a sit. Wandale Robinson, good underneath route runner, but just not a high ceiling. And in PPR leagues, yeah, he could get you that 10, 11 fantasy points, but like I said, it's not that high of a ceiling, but definitely a wide receiver that should be owned in 12-team leagues or deeper. To the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb last week, some bad drop passes, or he would have had over 200 yards if he made all those grabs, but he still had a big game with CeeDee Lamb. And this week versus a bad secondary, he's obviously a must-start. George Pickens, a quiet Cowboy debut, 3 catches, 30 yards, but I think he bounces back this week. And like I said, this could be a potential high-scoring game. So both these Cowboy receivers starts. Seattle Seahawks at the Pittsburgh Steelers. JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba, he's a start. I know he had 2 fumbles in last week's game, but this guy, he's been a PPR machine over the last 2 seasons. Sam Darnold, I know he didn't do much in that game, but he still found JSN. He goes out there and make plays. And obviously, after seeing the usage in Week 1 and the route participation, he's easily the number 1 wide receiver there. He's a start. Cooper Kupp a sit. Him and Sam Darnold weren't on the same page. Cooper Kupp, pretty much a non-existent ball game. I don't like to say it, but it might be the end for Cooper Kupp, where obviously his best years are behind him and he's just holding on for a couple more years, even though he definitely could prove me wrong this week after we saw this secondary get torched last week by Garrett Wilson and the Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Cooper Kupp, from what we saw the second half of last season and Week 1 versus the San Francisco 49ers, he's a sit. DK Metcalf a start. I thought he had a decent debut. 4 catches, 83 yards in his debut with the Pittsburgh Steelers. This week a better matchup on paper versus Seattle Seahawks. And obviously extra motivation in this one versus his former team. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if Metcalf goes for 100 and a touch. Calvin Austin the sit. I know last week it was a good game, but that was the Aaron Rodgers revenge game. And I think this offense, every week, we're not going to see that high output of putting up 34 points in a ball game. So Calvin Austin, yes, he had 70 yards and a touchdown. He is the number 2 wide receiver in the Steelers team, but he's a sit. Los Angeles Rams at the Tennessee Titans. Puka Nacua, one tough guy, obviously, no doubt about it. Took some bad hits to the head. He was even bleeding early in the ball game. Finished for 10 catches, 130 yards. He's a must-start every week. Davante Adams, a quiet debut, 4 catches, 51 yards. But Davante Adams, he's going to get going in this offense. And we saw last season where him and Garrett Wilson, both those receivers, put up numbers with the Jets. And obviously he's in a better situation here with the Rams, so he's a start. Calvin Ridley, a fringe option. We saw this Ram defense just shut down Nico Collins to 3 catches, 25 yards. So this Tennessee offense, it didn't look good. I know it was a very tough matchup at the Denver Broncos week 1. So Calvin Ridley, I just don't think his ceiling's high in this ball game as well. He's a fringe option. Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets. Keon Coleman to start. Big ball game for him. Him and Josh Allen look like they're on the same page. And Keon Coleman, I thought in his rookie season, would go out there and have a big game. But to be honest, second year now, put in more work in the offseason. Got a rapport down with Allen. And we saw it pay off in a big come-from-behind victory from 15 points versus the Baltimore Ravens. So he's a start. Khalil Shakir, Joshua Palmer. Those players, their ceilings are limited, even in a high-powered offense with arguably the best quarterback in the league in Josh Allen. And this week, it could be a tough matchup versus the New York Jets, a team that the Bills have had trouble putting points on the board against over the last 2-3 seasons in an AFC East matchup between the two teams. So like I said, the ceilings aren't high for those guys like it is for a Keon Coleman, so they're both sits. Garrett Wilson, he's a start each and every week. A lot of people I know is only 1 week, but they will worry Garrett Wilson's production will go down with Justin Fields in their quarterback. But week 1, these guys were on the same page. They were making plays. Wilson over 100 yards, he found the end zone. And this week versus Buffalo, you put him in the lineup. New England Patriots at the Miami Dolphins. Stephon Diggs, I thought it was a decent debut for him with this Patriot team. I believe he's still not 100% coming off the ACL. Him and Drake May got to get the rapport down a little bit more. But Diggs this week in Miami is secondary that can't stop anyone, where we just saw Indianapolis go up and down the field against them. He's a start. Demario Douglas, Keyshawn Boutte, they both sits in this one. I know Douglas found the end zone, but besides that, it was a quiet game where he didn't even reach double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues. So the touchdown made his day. Have to see way more out of him. And Boutte, though, he had 6 catches, 103 yards. So definitely a hot waiver wire pickup Boutte is for this Patriot team. Because anytime a guy goes out there, especially early in the season, and has 100 yards, that definitely catches my attention. We saw with Puka Nacua a couple seasons ago, and we saw how that turned out. I'm not saying Boutte's going to be Puka Nacua, but definitely someone to add. But this week, even in a good matchup, I have to see more before I put him in the lineup. He's a sit. To the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill will start. Quiet game. Just overall bad games for everyone besides Devon Achane and the offense in terms of fantasy football. Hill, only 4 catches, 40 yards. But this week versus a team he got a good track record against, he's a start in this one. Jalen Waddle is sit. We'll see if he plays in this game. Jalen Waddle, he was banged up once again, and that's been the problem with Waddle the last couple seasons. He leaves a game, comes back in, injury lingers for multiple weeks, he plays through it, and production hasn't been there. Let's be honest, this offensive line looked bad, and these guys couldn't do much running routes as well for this Dolphin team. So Hill, I'll take the shot with him that he bounces back, and Waddle, like I said, coming into the year, I didn't have much confidence in him, and this week he's a sit to me. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Cincinnati Bengals. Brian Thomas Jr., quiet week 1. If he didn't do that end around for a touchdown, it was a nothing ball game for him. He did have 7 targets, but him and Lawrence didn't connect. Put him in the starting lineup. If he starts struggling for 3-4 weeks in a row, then I would panic. And Travis Hunter, he was getting a decent amount of targets. He was full-time at the wide receiver position, and you need a playmaker like Hunter, especially in a game where you know Cincinnati is going to put points on the board. So he's a start. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, both starts. Both had arguably the worst games in the last 2 seasons for both these players. Jamar Chase to only score 4.40 fantasy points in PPR leagues is pretty much unheard of. So this week, good matchup. Jacksonville coming to town. It wouldn't be surprising to me if both these guys explode, with at least one of them getting 100 yards and a touchdown, or possibly both of them getting 100 yards in this one and a touchdown. So after a down week last week, they both start. San Francisco 49ers at the Saints. San Francisco banged up a whole lot in the receiving room. Tight end George Kittle, he's going to be out a couple weeks as well. And Jawan Jennings hurt the shoulder. There's still no word what the timetable or the diagnosis is with that injury. So Ricky Pearsall, he's the number 1 wide receiver. He had a solid week 1. We'll see if Brock Purdy plays as well. Even though Mac Jones last season, he got it going with Brian Thomas. So regardless, I think Pearsall's the start. Jawan Jennings, he would be a fringe option if he plays in this game with the shoulder, even though he didn't do much in week 1. So pretty much this offense, Christian McCaffrey and Pearsall are the only 2 players I trust now with the injury to George Kittle. And obviously Purdy might be out as well with a toe and shoulder injury. Now to the Saints, Chris Olave a start. He was a volume monster in week 1, even though he had another injury scare. And I said sell high Chris Olave in my video in sell players off this week, but we'll see with that. With Chris Olave, the thing is he's got to stay healthy, but he's going to get targets, like I said. Him and Rattler have some rapport playing last season together, season start. Rashid Shaheed, he's a sit in this one. I know he had a decent ball game. Was Rashid Shaheed, 9.30 fantasy points in PPR leagues, but they missed on a couple plays, even one in the end zone. In that one was him and Rattler. But Shaheed, we know he's that deep ball threat, but like I said, I got to see a little bit more out of him to start him. Cleveland Browns at the Baltimore Ravens, Jerry Jeudy a start. It was a slow week one early on in that game, but Jeudy and Tillman both got going in the second half. So Jerry Jeudy, we know he's a good play wide receiver, and when he has a quarterback that's a gunslinger like Flacco, we saw last season with Winston at times, he'll go out there and have some big games and put up numbers. So this week in a matchup where they could be down 2-3 touchdowns out of the gate and throw this football 40-45 times, he's a start. Cedric Tillman a sit, even though he's in my waiver wire video. It's Tillman. He's definitely a nice pickup. Number 2 wide receiver on this offense, and they're going to be trailing a lot all season long, but this week I just have to see a little bit more out of Tillman consistency-wise to put him in the lineup. He's a sit. Zay Flowers a start. Last week, the best game of his NFL career, over 140 yards, found the end zone, big plays, showing his speed, showing his yard after catch ability. And this week versus Cleveland, even though they did an amazing job on Jamar Chase, I have confidence in Flowers. He's a start. Rashad Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins a sit. Bateman, he didn't do much in that game. And Hopkins, he only caught 2 passes, but a very impressive one-handed touchdown in the end zone he caught was DeAndre Hopkins over the shoulder, but he has to play more snaps, and we have to see more consistency before he's a mainstay for fantasy football in the latter part of his career. Hopkins, Chicago Bears at the Lions, DJ Moore start. Thought DJ Moore, he was all right in week one. Him and Williams still not on the same page, where last season it was a down year for Moore, so he missed him on a wide open touchdown in that game on Monday night. He took a monster hit where right now I'm just thinking it could be broken ribs, the way he got hit, and he was limping off the field with DJ Moore. But he's a tough guy. He don't miss games, so he's going to play, and I'll start him in this one. Rome Odunze, he's a fringe option. I know he found the end zone in week one. It was Rome Odunze, but this offense as a whole didn't look good over there for Chicago. Caleb Williams, a lot of bad reads, a lot of inaccuracy, and he was throwing the ball up for grabs at times where his receivers were taking big hits. So Rome Odunze, he's a sit. Luther Bird in the city wasn't much into the game plan of this ball game. Was Burden, where he could be a second-half player for fantasy owners. And it's a Ben Johnson game where obviously he knows this Lion team, where he's the offensive coordinator there for 3 seasons. But like I said, Caleb Williams, he didn't look good, and I'm not too high on these Bear receivers right now. I'm on Ross St. Brown. He's a start for the Lions. It was an off week one for the whole offense. I think he bounces back, get things going, and he was a top 10 pick in most drafts. Jameson Williams got the contract extension. We know he didn't do much in week one as well, but that's one game you throw it out, and now here week 2, you know they're going to want to beat their former offensive coordinator is this Lion team, and especially the offense. They want to put points on the board to show them up a little bit. I think that they don't need them this season, even though in week 1 they could have used them. Denver Broncos at the Colts, Cortland Sutton to start, number 1 receiver easily over there for this Denver Bronco team. Now Evan Ingram banged up with a calf, so there could be more targets coming Sutton's way. He's a start. Marvin Mims is a sit. We haven't seen much out of Mims in the first couple years of his NFL career. And now to the Colts, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce all sit. So Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, they didn't do anything in week 1 in the blowout victory versus the Dolphins. But Michael Pittman had a nice ball game where he had 20 fantasy points in PPR leagues. But Pittman's going to have a tough assignment. Patrick Surtain, one of the best corners in the league, is going to cover him majority of this game. I think it was a little bit fluky in week 1 where Miami's decimated on defense, and that's why this offense put points on the board. Carolina Panthers at the Cardinals, Tetora McMillan. I thought it was a decent rookie debut for him. 5 catches, 68 yards in that one. He's easily the number 1 option in the passing game. And once again, the Panthers are going to be trailing and have to throw a whole lot. Season start. Xavier Legette, non-existent. He was in week 1. And I think Legette, I know it's a little bit early in his career, but he possibly could be a bust, where he's not getting separation on his routes, he's not finishing the routes, and he just really hasn't done much so far as Legette from last season. And the first game, he was pretty much non-existent. Marvin Harrison Jr. start for the Cardinals. Him and Murray are connecting early in the season. He had over 80 yards and found the end zone in his week 1 is Marvin Harrison. And we know he's a big-time receiver. He was a top 5 pick in the NFL draft last season, and him and Murray just need the rapport. And week 1, they look good, obviously, at the New Orleans Saints. And this week with another great matchup versus the Panthers. He's a nice start. Philadelphia Eagles at the Chiefs. Super Bowl rematch at Arrowhead in this one. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, both didn't do much, especially A.J. Brown in week 1 versus the Dallas Cowboys. But after an embarrassing performance for A.J. Brown, I think he comes out in this one as a big game. And we saw last season this receiving room have a monster Super Bowl and put a lot of points on the board early versus Chief defense. So both these receivers, I think, bounce back and it starts, and this could be a high-scoring game. And now to the Chiefs, Xavier Worthy, a fringe option. He's day-to-day with the shoulder injury, which I think he might gut it out as Worthy and play in this one. But this offense, I know last week, Hollywood Brown, he had a good ball game. We had the 10 catches, 99 yards. But this is a better secondary, obviously, with great players in that secondary is Philadelphia. And I just think this Chief team, they're going to try to change it up a little bit. Where I know they threw the football a whole lot in week 1 versus the Chargers in Brazil. I can't trust these guys week in and week out. I know Hollywood Brown, like I said, he had the 10 for 99, but he's been injured majority of the last couple seasons, and we'll see how he does versus a better secondary this week. Atlanta Falcons at the Vikings. Drake London, he's banged up with a shoulder injury. We'll see if he plays in this ball game. Obviously, if he does, he's a must-start number 1 option in the offense. And Darnell Mooney was banged up. He missed last week's game with a shoulder injury of his own, so he's a fringe option. Where this Minnesota secondary, obviously, he's been solid the last couple seasons. Penix, we'll see how he does versus a very good defense. One of the better defenses in the league is Penix, and if he could get the receivers his ball now to the Vikings, Justin Jefferson to start each and every week. Last week, the offense didn't look good the first 2.5 quarters, and then J.J. McCarthy, he got things going, he got his rhythm down, and him and Jefferson connected on a touchdown. He's a start. Adam Thielen a sit. He didn't do anything in the week 1 game. Still trying to get the playbook back down a little bit is Adam Thielen. Only a 2-point conversion he had. And also him and McCarthy, I know, have worked together in off-season. Thielen, he's got to get feel of things once again over there in Minnesota. And like I said, not doing anything in week 1. He's a sit. And now the final of 2 Monday night games of the week. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Houston Texans. Mike Evans, he's a start. Quiet ball game for him in week 1. But Evans, week in and week out, this is going to be most weeks than not productions there. He's a start and Baker's a gunslinger. And Emeka Egbuka, in his first career game, found the end zone twice. He's an impressive rookie, first-round rookie. They took him for a reason, and he had a big touchdown late in that one to help beat the Falcons. He's a start versus Texans secondary. That's hit or miss. Nico Collins a start. Bad game for him, no doubt about it. Last week, 3 catches, 25 yards for Nico Collins. But I think he bounces back, and this secondary of Tampa Bay just isn't that good. So he's a start. Jaden Higgins, Xavier Hutchinson, have to see way more from both these wide receivers to put him in the starting lineup. And Christian Kirk as well, if he even plays in this game, he's not going to be a start for me. Pretty much this offense is going to run through Nico Collins. And like we saw last week when it didn't get it going, lost 14-9 in that one. Los Angeles Chargers at the Raiders to close it out. The second Monday night game of the week. Ladd McConkey a start. I thought he had a decent start to the season was Ladd McConkey. He could run all the routes, obviously. Great hands, number 1 option in the passing game. But this team very deep, and Justin Herbert and this offense, they were in the pass mode and aggressiveness in week 1. And that's what it takes to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's how they got it done. Keenan Allen, he had a nice week 1, no doubt about it. Found the end zone. Is Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, he's a fringe option for me. Have to see a little bit more out of him. See the route participation, see the snaps. No doubt about it, week 1 he had a big game, was Keenan Allen. But if he goes out there once again and has another solid game, he's a start pretty much weekly. And Quentin Johnson, we saw last season, get off to a good start and then fizzle out in the middle of the season, and drops have been an issue for him throughout his career. So if he could fix that, he could be a mainstay in this offense. And Justin Herbert, we know, has a lot of talent, likes to spread a defense out, so he could be in those 3 receiver sets. So he's a hot waiver wire pickup. No doubt about it, is Quentin Johnston. But in terms starting lineup right away, I don't agree with it. I have to see a little bit more. And once the bye weeks hit, that's when you really could put a guy in and have more confidence. But right now, with every team playing, I don't think Johnson's a starter even after coming off a 24-point performance in PPR leagues. And now to the Raiders, Jacoby Myers a start, number one option there. I know he requested a trade a few weeks ago. They didn't obviously grant him it, so he's going to be the number one there. And now if Brock Bowers is banged up and misses some time, it's going to be more targets Jacoby Myers' way. He's a start. Jack Beck had a couple flash plays, but he's not an option yet in fantasy football. He's a sit. Trey Tucker found the end zone, but if he didn't score the touchdown, he didn't do anything last week. He's a sit. And Donto Thornton, he had 2 catches, 45 yards. He's the guy I think that could break out in this receiving room. So definitely someone to stash on your roster, but also as well someone not to have in your lineup. So that's wide receiver start sit every matchup for week 2 of the fantasy football season.